Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of The Author's Way with Theresa and myself, Luca Di Matteo. You've met us both before. You know that Theresa is a multi-award-winning children's book author, and I'm a debut novelist with my book coming out in June of 2020. We hope you enjoy this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about our writing process and how both Theresa and I have very different styles, and we hope that you can pick and choose the different parts of each one to help you in your writing process. Theresa, how are you doing today? Oh, we should also note that because of COVID-19, Theresa and I are now doing this podcast remotely, as she is at home in her home and I'm at home in mine in lockdown. Theresa, how are you doing today?
Good. It's a little stressful, but we're getting through it, right?
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, we got it done, though. We got the Zoom ready to roll. We're doing great.
All right, great. Well, you know what, Theresa? Let's jump right into it, okay?
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right, Theresa, how do you come up with your ideas for your stories?
My ideas are based on when I used to teach and how what worked and what didn't work when I was teaching. I had a lot of different students from preschool all the way to 12th grade, all different types of children. So I keep on thinking about that and my experiences, and that's how I come up with my ideas and how I try to keep on knowing what's needed when I was teaching versus what needs to be now. I might have to update, but that's pretty much how I come up with my ideas. How do you do it? You do that?
For me, it's a little different. For me, it's a little different. Yes, a lot of it is experiences I've had in life, but for the most part, I take bits and pieces of little things that I've heard or learned, and the rest of it comes from me in that time I call it the in-between. That time just before I fall asleep and while I'm still just a little bit awake. And I seem to be most creative in that, and I get up and I write these ideas down. And currently I'm running 2 stories at the same time right now. And it gets a little crazy. But I managed to put one aside and work on the other one for a while. But that's how I get
Well, it's hard. It's definitely harder for you because you have really big storylines, right? Whereas mine is short and to the point. For 16 pages, yes, I have to do my artwork. However, I can get a story done, boom, and then I can go on to another story, done, boom, whereas you have to keep it expanded out, right? Isn't that what you do?
Yeah, it is. And I actually think you have the more challenging adventure. For me, I can draw the stories out into 300 and plus pages. I'm starting to write a short story, and I'm finding that I have to dump all the information in such a small space. I don't know how you do it.
Well, I don't know how you do it because I'm having a hard time. I condense. And the first, I'm like, first chapter, I think it's over. I want the 300 pages. That's not working. So,
that's why we write what we write.
Everybody has their own style, right?
Yeah, that's why we write what we write. So,
what leads you to the idea, though? What leads you to it? What leads you to the idea? Is it just your dreams or other things?
I think it's other things also. It's not just creatively dreaming. There are social events that come up, things in the media, something like that might trigger something in me. And later on that day or a couple of days later, I may see something that sparks an idea, and I write that idea down. It may not be an idea that goes into the current novel I'm writing, but I know somewhere along the line it's going to come to life somewhere. How about you?
What leads me to the idea is the struggles that I used to see teaching. However, when I see it again, when I'm writing, then I know that I should do it again. So I saw the struggle when I was writing, when I was teaching. Now I see it when I'm writing. Then that's the story I want to push out because it's actually a common theme. It's when I used to teach versus what's happening now. So I think that's what I do. That helps me lead to that next idea to write again. Or sometimes I just talk to different parents and will tell me, oh, write a book on this or write a book on that. I need this. And I said, ooh, great idea. So, all these people definitely influence my way of doing things. And that way I get to push out what people say. But who influences you? How does your influencing work?
I mean, well, because of the 20-something odd years of being in the medical profession and helping co-run two self-help and personal growth organizations with my wife, I've met so many people during my lifetime so far, so many different personalities, so many different experiences with those people that I have just all this stuff stored in my head, and
Right.
it just jumps out of me and onto the pages. For
That's
me,
like me with my students. They jump, like, I'll think of something that jumps back into my head. Oh, yes, I remember that kid.
well,
You were saying?
but you were a special ed teacher. Okay, I was a doctor. You write for children who struggle with different disabilities or challenges, if you want to call them. Okay, I write medical mysteries mostly. We write what we know, and I know you're going to repeat the line, so go ahead.
Go ahead.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in my line, my lane. That's what you tell me all the time, and I cry because I want to get out of the lane because I like to shake up the box, but you don't let me. It's okay.
Well, no, it's not that I don't let you.
I know.
No, that's not true. You were making a very good attempt at it and then stopped. So we'll come back to that another time. But let's go on. I mean, we're talking really now about purpose and why we write what we write. Okay. And we write what we write because we see a need for it in some way or another. And even as we spoke earlier, and I said, we both agreed, we both write on issues that have some social matter to them.
Absolutely. I would call, a doctor actually looked at my work and he said, "You write social stories." And I said, "Yes, I do." That's pretty much what it is. It's not a clean cut, dry story where, I put thought-provoking stuff in my books to make sure that we can actually have everybody on the same page, not only the child, but whoever's around the child and wants to make sure that all that works. I think that's why I create my stories, because, like you said, it's a social need, and I think you do that too. You have social needs. And what do you mean by that for your type of book and your type of work?
Well, there's always a hidden agenda in my stories. Okay?
Right.
My novels always have a hidden social meaning or something underneath that's being unraveled. It may not be in the main context of the story or the main idea, but it's there. It's hidden in there, and I think that it's important that they be in there. I just don't like to. For me, just writing a mystery or some type of event that goes on that doesn't have any meaning to it. It's not what I like to do. I like to attach something to it. Are you going to find that? Go ahead.
Don't you feel like it's because that's our job before?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think you're right. It was important to us before, so why should that change now? But I have a question. Right. I have another question for you. You said you talk to parents and you talk to children, and it's about your experiences. But I know you. It's not just about that, because I know you. You're an excellent researcher. How do you come about your research? Well, how do you do that?
Well, some of it is from what I've done as a teacher. I know what works and what doesn't work, and how the years have passed. I've worked from the preschool level all the way up to 12th grade, like I said before. I actually do research on, with my book, and I'll show you my book. Actually, someone told me to read this, because I'm researching autism, because I don't know it solid. I want to know it solid. But, a person told me to read this, and I'm really liking it because I'm learning more, and I need to learn more. And those research things, helps me grow as a writer and helps me learn more that I didn't understand before. And I thought I knew a lot teaching, but now I have another direction to look at for this type of research. And I think this is very crucial and important to understand the autism spectrum right now. And, I know enough, but now I'm going to be really skilled, and I want my book to be really skilled. So the next book that comes out. What about you? What do you do for research?
And up to date, correct?
Oh, yes. I want it definitely up to date.
Mm-hmm. For me, research is a little different. I write a lot about medical stuff in my books, and but there's also research that has to be done. But unlike you, who likes to use mostly books, I tend to like to use the internet. and search different
Yeah.
sites, and I'll spend hours researching different things that I need to learn, and also to be confident in what I'm writing, just like you are.
Right.
But for me, the online source is much better than going back and forth to books. I do want to give a little bit of warning out there. One of the things I have really, really been noticing is be very careful about what sources you use online. I tend to always find the source I want, and then I double check it maybe 2 or 3 times with other sources, because there's a lot of information out there that is just not true. So that's my caution to anyone listening right now. Go ahead
But,
and
I also, like what you're saying, definitely on the website and everything, but sometimes when you talk to people actually in the field and what they're doing right now, currently, you might be able to trigger that. Like, I'm sure, like, I know that you've done character building by asking people in things that would have to do with certain types of problems that you want for that character. I'm not going to say, but then you research that. I actually have some books at home. I was like, oh, maybe you could read this book, and then that will help you with the brain, development or whatever you were doing. I'm not going to say anymore. But that's what I have to do. And I talk to parents, about, oh, what's your need? What do you want? But then I also talk to doctors in the field, and those doctors actually tell me what they're researching now. And I try to take those articles from that doctor and put it onto my MailChimp newsletter to push that out. How about you? What do you?
I think that's so important. Research comes in many different forms. I agree with you. And life experiences, interviewing, books, the internet, those are all forms of research that I think you have to do some part of each one of them if you're going to really know what you're writing about. And I always tell people when they ask me, how much research do I have to do? And I say to them, in the West, it used to be, there's always going to be a faster gunslinger. Well, there's always going to be someone who knows more about what you're writing about than you do. But if you're in the ballpark, you're doing a good job. If you're totally off the mark, okay, it's not going to work. And, my little slogan is look it up or look dumb. So.
Right. And I think also too, for my artwork, I have to do that too. I have to research what certain things are, look like. I actually have one of my dummies, my books, dummies, about prison, right? And my girlfriend said, well, think about what it looks like in that room when the prisoner is there and the other people are coming to visit. Does it look like what you just portrayed in your picture? And I said, I think so. Right. So then I had to look up pictures to make sure that I'm doing it right. And I did the jail story with animals. I'm not doing it with I don't care what nationality, I don't care, that it's not what it's about. What it's about is trying to get the storyline through. And it's also about, I just use animals for that because, whatever, animals are crazy, right? So how do you build your character?
Well, actually, before we get into that, I want to just back up 1 second. Okay.
Sure.
But it's funny that you say that because in Greenhaven, my novel that's coming out in June, there is a scene in there that takes place in an interrogation room in a precinct. And I actually had a friend of mine who was a police officer send me a photo of what an interrogation room looks like. So research comes in all different forms. As far as character building, I think that you have an interesting job in the way you do it because you write the story, but then you have to illustrate the character in the way that you do it, and you use construction paper to do that. So you have to build a character, and I'm sure you have to be sensitive to how you think people are going to look at that character on the page. For me, it's a little different. I can give them written words for it, but in their mind, they have to picture their own view of that character. And character building is unique for both of us. I think we do it in a very different way. You can explain your process a little bit more.
Well, mine is I really write the story. And usually, I know this once I get the idea in my head, it takes me a good hour to bust it out. And after I do that, I really look at it and I think. I say, okay, try to edit it myself a couple times, but of course I'm going to miss things, and that's why I have my friend Luca. Thank you. And I have my other friends review it. But I have my friend who loves what I'm doing, and she's a school psychologist, and I love her. So she sometimes she wants to read it for content too, right? Which is great. So I have her as my beta reader. I have my mother as my beta reader, and then I have them like look through all of what I'm doing and then structure it. But when I go to the artwork, right, I take a chunk where I think, the visual is seen, and then I try to put that into a picture. And I try to make that work. With Scribbles and Mrs. Sunshine, I had to do that. So, okay, she's struggling. Here's Mrs. Scribbles. What she look like? And then I have to go, what was Mrs. Sunshine like? Well, she's a combination between me and my former special ed teacher, who's amazing, Mrs. Sperry. I love her. She's passed away. She actually passed away the year it was published, which is extremely sad for me. So I think about because I became a special ed teacher and she became a special ed teacher, and we actually shared the same type of students, actually the same kids sometimes. So it's very interesting, but then I'm going back to the art. So I would do that and I would chunk it. I would chunk each piece, and make sure that the art.
By chunking, you mean you would take a section of what you read and create the illustrations in that?
Yes, I go
chunk. Our listeners understand what you mean by chunking. So,
yes.
Okay, great.
Well, because if you're a special ed teacher, or if you're a teacher of any sort or anything, chunking for us, right? I don't mean it.
Well, I think that the rest of the world would want to know too. For me, it's a little different. I had a whole 6-step process for creating a character. I first of all determine where my character is going to be in the story. In that, is the character a main character or a supporting character? Are they an antagonist or protagonist? Okay. Are they what I call a cameo appearance character? And they're just going to be in for a couple of pages or something like that and still play a key role, or do they not play a key role? And that's what I call the what. And there are 6 other stages to go through: the background, the life experiences, the education, the archetypes. And I go through that. By the way, I'm just going to do a little plug here real quick. I am putting together a webinar specifically on how to build characters that are alive and 3D and memorable. And that'll be coming out on my website soon. That's Luca Di Matteo. That's luca-dimatteo.com. Anyway, that's my plug for that. Theresa, what about you in how you take a character from beginning to end? How does the character change for you?
Character changes with a struggle in the beginning, usually, and grows to a real big struggle in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to figure out how to make sure we can resolve that struggle by the end. And usually Mrs. Sunshine is my key player. In all my series, like I got a bunch of books like ready to roll. Sometimes she's a gym teacher. Sometimes she's an English teacher. Sometimes she's, being a special educator, and I'm sure people who are watching know that you do change in all different types of subjects. You could be an inclusion teacher for math, and then I was a vocational teacher, and I remember going downstairs and being under a car with my students, and then I was in health services with those kids, and I was learning some very interesting technology and terminology. Thank you, Luca. So you might have to tell me about some of that. But the thing is, the character has to change, meaning like, oh my God, very struggled. Oh my God, this is really rough. And then Mrs. Sunshine kind of pulls her back. And so that's why it's a resource series, meaning to help the children and to help the student and to help the people around the child. So it can be and use multi areas, in the doctor's office. I actually had a dentist purchase it for his office, and so on. So
Well, but your books have one added quality to it, in that they have lesson plans in the back.
right. For Scribbles right now, I do have lesson plans, and on my website you can see that I wrote those things, my lesson plans up, because I know they work. I did them. So I know they worked and they're successful, and I put that in my shop area. Right now I'm doing, my book's being sold, and I'm going to give $2 to a fund, the children's fund. And so I really think
That's for COVID-19, correct?
Yes, right. And the thing is, I just did a video on it, because I know there's struggle right now. And I made these, like little chain things that keep going, to help kids rip that chain off. Okay, one day it's done. Okay, let's look at another, because there's social emotional pieces to teaching besides just the academics.
And you build that into characters too, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I've tried to show all the time in all my books, that it's a social emotional and it's academic driven, but you have to learn how to teach exactly how these kids need to be taught. And I'm sure that, a lot of people do this correctly. I'm not saying I'm the key person and the key player of it, but I know it works in what I've done, and I know it works. So I try to put it in a book if someone feels lost, and a lot of times people will say Scribbles has a lot of research attached to it. And I say, yeah, it was just a day in the life of Theresa Mackowitz. So.
Oh, and
really?
And Scribbles is on sale on your website.
Yeah, it is right now for the COVID-19.
And we should also mention, you just revamped your website.
Yes, I did.
It looks fantastic, by the way. I wanted to tell you, it looks really, really good.
Thanks. And I had a good friend. She was really great, Janet. She helped me get it through and helped me get it to the next level. Because it takes time. It takes time to build your audience. It takes time to be an author. It takes time to learn these tricks. Like Luca and I, we used to sit in Starbucks and talk, have our coffee, and talk about what the next move is, what the next piece is, how we can push his book, how can we push my book, and where does this go? You helped me even get me to PBS, right? And so I figured out how I actually called them. I couldn't believe they actually called me back. But we did the groundwork, the research together, and then I jumped, and I want to do that for you, and I'm hoping I do that with you.
Well, that's all down the line after the story's written, then we start publishing.
Right.
Oh, by the way, why don't you give that new revamped website out so people can look at it?
Oh, it's www.tmack.books.com.
Great.
But you can find me on all these other channels too, on Facebook and wherever.
Social media. We both try to hit social media pretty hard.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back on track here, because people are wanting to hear about how we build our characters. What do you go through for yourself emotionally as you're building your characters? I think that's important. Do you feel anything when that happens?
I feel like I have a mission, and I feel like I need to help these kids, because now I'm not in the classroom. I'm with my boys, which is wonderful, don't get me wrong, and my husband's in the Coast Guard. So, I think about what I used to do in the classroom, and I feel like I need to give back, and that's my mission through my book. So I guess I do feel a little sad as I'm writing, because I'm not in the classroom. However, I'm in a new adventure. That's what you said, right? You said that about you're on a new adventure because you're not a doctor anymore, but you take your doctor with you just like I take my special ed teaching with me, right? Don't you feel that way too? So I guess I do feel.
I do. It's been a long 2 years since I retired from being a doctor. And I was forced to for an injury that was over time. But anyway, that's another story. But writing for me has changed my world. What I have found is when I'm writing these characters, when I'm building them, when I go through my process of laying out the different 6 stages and putting them in the categories, and what I think of each character, when I start to actually write the story, the characters become alive, and I become the characters, or the characters become me, and the flow of the story coming out of me is like real life, and the adventure is just begins, and before I know, 330 pages are done, and I want to continue, but a story has to move on. And I think that the experience that both being the writer and reading stories has to be equally great. Otherwise, it's just another book. You agree?
Absolutely. You know, each story in my series, when I eventually have the whole series come out, I have like, I don't know, like 12 dummies done. So, but each is a little bit of a kid's book, you know, about their disability or abilities, and how to get past it, how to keep moving. So, so it's a little piece of my heart, every single book, because it really deals with how to help a child grow through what they're dealing with.
So
that's how I work.
when I'm creating characters for my stories, I get this skeleton outline in my mind, and then I flesh it out on the sections that I write for in my character building platform. And then they take on their own lives, and they change and grow and become real life people as that happens. Does that happen with you, or do your characters, are they completely built before you write the story?
It's usually, I think of a situation, and I think of how the character might have a problem, whatever their problem is or their issue. And then what we do from that point is I try to, like you said, flush it out, right? Into a story form of, I have 16 pages to complete the story. And I have to make sure that this character looks, feels, and acts. And I got to illustrate this topic all the way through. So we have to just make sure that I get it all done and put it in there, and make sure that I want it authentic. I want to make sure it's real. And I want to make sure that these kids understand that they're not alone, and that they can actually continue this.
I can't imagine having a page limit to what has to be written. Right? To me, that would just cut me short so hard. It'd be so hard, because I'd like to make these such grandiose characters with such detail, such life to them, and you have to get it all inside this much. I don't know how you do it.
You know, I love it. It's fun because I feel complete afterwards. I feel like my mission is this, and now I got to go on to the next kid. So that's how I feel. But
and I think episode 3 coming up is going to deal with some more about how we build our stories and develop them, how we go into editing and beta readers, and we'll end up, with a full story by the end, whether it be one of your picture books or one of my novels. We'll discuss those topics, and then in one of the following episodes, we'll start talking about publishing and how to find agents and publishers and things of that nature.
And mine definitely looks different than yours would to submit.
Yeah. And both you and I are going through that together, and we're learning quite a bit from one another.
Oh, yes. Yes. And as Mrs. Sunshine would say, just remember, close your eyes and dream. You will get there.
Okay, thank you. This has been The Author's Way with Theresa Makowitz and Luca Di Matteo. If you want to email us at authorsway@gmail.com. And please remember to like this video.
And we hope you subscribe, and we want to continue helping is really what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, Theresa.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Luca.
Thanks, everyone.